Welcome to the Marketing Phoenix podcast, where you're going to learn the best growth strategies for marketing that leads to sales. My name is Melissa Rogozinski, and I'll be your host. Before we dive in, please be sure to click that follow button and subscribe to our show. Also, please remember to download and share your favorite episodes and tag RPC Strategies on LinkedIn. 5-star ratings are always welcome. Today we're going to talk about brand awareness, and I am super excited to have two of my closest, most funnest friends, if that's even a word. I know somebody's going to correct me on that. Eda Rosa of Eda Rosa LLC and Joe Krout. I'm not even going to tell you where Joe's from. I'm going to let Joe tell you where he's from. By the t-shirt he's wearing, you can already read his personality, and I'm excited for y'all to discover more. So with that, Eda, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody just a little bit about your background?
Eda Rosa. I originally started as a full-time paralegal, litigating files, going with attorneys to law firms, jury picking, the whole 9 yards. Literally prepared the lawyers from start to finish in their litigation process. I started from the bottom as a billing clerk all the way to a CEO paralegal, which is where I got my nickname when I opened up my business. That's why they call me the CEO paralegal. And now what I do is I train the law firm staff. I create training materials and I onboard and do all the things revolving around staff with the law firms in order to have hopefully a better environment, because as we know, the legal industry loves to just sink or swim their team members. And so we're trying to change that narrative, hopefully one client at a time.
Awesome. Joe, tell everybody where you're from and what you do.
So I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, or in a little town just outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I'm a graphic designer. I've been a graphic designer since 1991. Since 2009, I've run my own operation at Joe 2.0. And we focus mainly on small business startups, people who are just going out, putting their own shingle out and developing brands for them, and trying to get them to be consistent across their application so that we can build brand awareness for them. I also, on the side, operate Route 66's only world-famous fake mortuary, Diggum Deep Mortuary, which is it happened because of a Google mistake, basically. So, and we just took it and run with it, because that's when serendipity happens, that's what you're supposed to do as a business. When the lightning strikes, you make hay. So,
Do you have some of your swag there with you? You know what my favorite one is so far that I've seen?
No, which one's your favorite?
The snack bags.
Oh yeah, the snack bags. Let me see. I think I've got. Oh, a lot of the stuff's in the store right now. We have calendars now, so. But yeah, I think all the snack bags made it to we have a retail operation that we stocked up, and most of that's over there, unfortunately. So,
Or you got to tell the audience what the snack bags were.
So, the mortuary is a grassroots type thing, and what the mortuary actually does is it promotes other businesses in Sapulpa, Oklahoma. So Sapulpa has a historic downtown. My wife and I moved there in 2018. We bought a building and redid it over COVID. And Sapulpa's a neglected suburb, basically. All the other suburbs around Tulsa, a lot of them are much bigger and have experienced growth. And Sapulpa has Route 66 running through its historic downtown. Most of the buildings that are there were built between 1910 and 1918 during the oil boom and the Glen Pool. And so when my wife and I came in, we were like, why is this not bigger than this? And so we got involved in a grassroots operation to help promote and get the town to grow, basically, and get its due, because it has the potential to be something amazing. And in doing that, the mortuary exists basically to promote other businesses in Sapulpa. And so it's just a happenstance that we sell merchandise just simply because the people who support the merchant. Other merchants wanted merchandise. So it's an interesting thing, but again, it's a way to market the town in a non-traditional way, and come up with something creative and exciting to try and promote them. So, and it's one of those a rising tide raises all boats. So if we can get other people to succeed, then we all succeed.
Snack bags.
Snack bags. So the snack bags. So what we do, because we're small, is we have a vendor that runs a promo every week, and every week they promote a different product in their product line. And so they'll do a small run for you. And so it's perfect for the mortuary. And they had food safe resealable bags. And so the food safe resealable bags, you could print both sides of them. And so one side of it says, it's a black bag. It looks like the shirt does. It has the logo. And then down below it says, can contain up to 3 ounces of someone special. And on the back side of it, it says, let's see them try and steal your lunch now. So,
and they're reusable.
Yeah, they're reusable. You can rinse them out and reuse them. So we sell them on the website at, what is the website? The website's firstgraderebel.com is where all these crazy ideas that we come up with end up at. And so we sell them on there. So basically, how crazy can we get? Because I'm the client with the mortuary, and so I'm the only person I have to make happy. And so the zanier it is, then
the happier Joe is.
Right. Yeah. It's one of those deals where you always try and get your clients to kind of go outside the box and think what would make them unique in the industry. And the key with branding is trying to establish that. And so we had this happenstance happen. We built a metal building, or we wanted to build a metal building in downtown Sapulpa, and they told me I couldn't do that because I was in the historic district. They said if I wanted to do that, I had to put a facade on it. Well, I didn't realize that a facade meant 18 inches of brick around the bottom. So I actually designed a facade. So that's what the garage looks like, is it looks like an old West town. So I also sign paint on the side, and I made signs we have IC Clearly, which is our optometrist. We have the Old Town Saloon, and then we have Willie Diggum and Barry M. Deep. Those are our morticians, and so we have Diggum Deep Mortuary. And Google drove their car by. They thought the mortuary was real. They created a Google business page for the mortuary. So I noticed this because I was doing some work for another client in town, and there's a Google waypoint in my garage, and I was like, why is there a Google waypoint in my garage? And so I click on it, and it says Diggum Deep Mortuary Casket Service. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I called on my friends, and I said, I don't care if it's good or bad, write me a review. We created a website, and we created a Facebook page, and within 24 hours, we're ranked on Google as the #2 mortuary in town, above 3 other legitimate mortuaries. And then we're just off to the races after that. So, yeah. And so
one of the best branding stories I have ever heard.
Amazing. I can't even top that. That's awesome.
And that's when these accidents happen, you have, this is when something goes viral, the people that take advantage of it, they're the people who make hay. If you can figure out how to bend the situation to your advantage, and figure out how to use it to further your means, we use the promotion and marketing from that. We sell some merchandise, and that's nice. It's fun. But we really use that to promote other businesses in town. And so, you say, it's a fake mortuary, but because we're on Route 66, we get people from all over the world. I've met people from England, from Germany, all over Europe, and they stop and they want to know what's going on, and you tell them, and then while you're talking to them, it's like, well, did you check out this store? And did you have lunch here? Have you been to this place? And so, we try and enhance their experience while they're traveling the route, so that when they get back overseas, not only do they had a good time, they kind of see America for what America is and not America that's on the news. And we help other businesses. What we hope is those people have such a good time, they tell their friends, and when their friends come and visit us, then they also stop in. And so it's just, it's simple branding, simple customer relation stuff. But it's doing it in a non-traditional or goofy way. And not everything can be goofy. I get that, but when you can break out of the mold of what an industry is and make yourself shine a little differently. I mean, I teach on the side, and one of the things I'd like to use as an example is if you look at car insurance 20 years ago, insurance in general is sold with a straight face. It's all very dry. It's facts and numbers. It's sold by fear. You want to be protected. You want to be covered. And you had Geico and Progressive. They've been insurance companies for a long time. Nobody knew who they were. They were more business-to-business type insurance companies, commercial lenders or insurers. And so they needed to come into that market space, and they needed to get noticed. And they're trying to come in where there's already an established market. There's big players. And so they did that with humor. And that was at the time, that was a non-traditional way to sell insurance. Now, if you look at the insurance industry 20 years later, they all use humor. Everybody's got a gimmick. Everybody's got you got Flo with Progressive, you got the Lizard with Geico, Allstate has Mayhem, State Farm has Jake. Everybody is selling with humor now. And so there was a paradigm shift in the advertising industry for selling insurance. And these things are like rubber bands or pendulums. It'll swing back the other direction. And so someone will come in at some point and say, we don't joke about insurance because we know it's serious when these tragedies happen. And they'll stand out in the market, and then chances are it'll all swing back the other direction. And so when we look at somebody's branding in the market, we look at, do you need to do something that upends the industry, or do you need to look like you fit in? How do you want to market your brand, and how do we get people to notice you? Because most of the clients that we deal with, they're going into a market that's already crowded. They're another plumbing service or HVAC company. They're another law firm. There are other people in that industry already. And so we try and find a way that they can stand out. And then with branding, we always say, and Eda probably knows this too, about the time you're tired of saying it, that's when people are just beginning to hear it. And so you can't say, well, we've done this for 3 weeks or 3 months and we're tired of it. We want to do something different. It's like, no. Nobody else is paying attention. Everybody else is so busy, and we're so, there's so much put in front of everybody now with social media and with the phone in your pocket and the internet. You're competing for people's eyes. So it's so much higher now, the competition is, than what it used to be, that you have to give people a chance to catch on. And if you're rebranding every 2 years or even every 5 years, you're really shooting yourself in the foot, because you're not giving your brand a chance to establish itself and grow, really. Wouldn't you agree, Eda?
I always use McDonald's as an example, just because McDonald's is in every book that you can talk about when it comes to branding and businesses and how it was like the first, right? They were like the first franchise, the first automation and process. And in our consulting law firm, we often take a lot of that as well, right? Because some of these law firms, they want to branch out. They want to open new locations in other states and things like that. So replicating the same system so that it can be consistent throughout is very important to them. or the day that they want to sell and get acquired or merge or whatever the case may be. Process is everything, right? Like you were saying, in a world where everybody does it, how can you stand out? And that has a lot to do with your brand, your presence. I always like to promote a community, right? You are, no matter what business you're in, you're serving a community. Identify that community. What do they look like? Where do they shop? What do they like? Like, we got to the point where we know that our clients love Target and love Starbucks. What do those two things have in common? They're in the same place most of the time, right? You go to Target, there's a Starbucks. So, actually identifying, who you're actually attracting, looking at the analytics, of course, that's always important. But it took me a long time to figure out who actually wants my services. It's not every lawyer out there. It's not every legal organization out there. There is a specific type of law firm that is looking for our specific niche tailored services, right? And it took me a little bit, like Joe was saying about not just like rebranding every 2 to 3 years or 5 years, really staying to your brand. But that also has to do with you, right? A lot of us don't identify that the brand is you. You are the brand. If you're selling, you're out there, you're marketing, you're doing the thing. Doesn't matter if you have a marketing assistant. It doesn't matter if you have a strategist. It does not matter. We have all of that at our company. But at the end of the day, the posts that get the most recognition are the ones of me and my children, or me doing something, the day in the life of, because at the end of the day, Eda Rosa is the brand. Yes, we offer all these things. We have a podcast where we're on your blogs, we're on your LinkedIn every morning. We're doing the thing. And another thing I wanted to add to this conversation is being consistent, but also being authentic. People will realize if you're being fake. If you yourself don't believe in your product, nobody else is going to believe in your product, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That is huge. The authenticity part of it, especially with social media, is, they want to know who you are and what you do. And I always say your brand makes your first impression for you. It doesn't matter whether you see it on the side of a vehicle, or it's on a business card, or it's in a TV commercial or whatever. But, the brand makes your first impression. And then when the people walk through the door, or they pick up the phone and they call you, it's your job to continue to make that impression and be consistent with your branding. And so if you've put yourself out there as you're friendly and you're polite and you've got great service, and customer service is really your focus, and you answer the phone like, yeah, what? Then it doesn't work. Or when you walk through the front door, the person at the front desk is short and not very helpful, then all that work that we do for you, all that branding and everything, boy, that just gets erased in a heartbeat. And so everybody kind of has to be on board with what you're trying to do. The company has to understand what the mission is in your branding. And so, because they are your ambassadors, and if they don't act like ambassadors for your brand, then no amount of advertising money, analytics, etc., can turn things around, because, everybody's got to be on board.
So this is a fantastic way to start this podcast, and talking about these stories and just how brand becomes the life and the soul of a business, of a company. So let me back this up just real quickly then. So Eda, let me punt to you. Just very basically, now that we've shared some of these stories, and there's plenty more to share, how would you define brand? Oh, there's plenty. How would you define brand awareness for the B2B space?
I would say it's the heartbeat. It's the mission of the company, right? Because how Joe was saying it, if you don't yourself believe in it and create it and craft it, nobody's going to believe in it, create it and craft it for you or with you, or, invest in it, right? So I would say that the awareness part is, how do you want your company to be portrayed? How do you want people to see your brand at home? What's going to make them consistently come back to your services? Because although, especially in my case, it looks like it's a one-time deal, our clients have been with us for years. We continue our services way after we create training materials and everything. And that's because, one, obviously they got the experience that they expected. Two, it's consistent and we deliver, right? That's our heartbeat. That's what we believe in. That's what we brand. If you meet me in person, I'm the same. No matter, catch me on a good day or bad day. If I realize you're from the industry or you know who I am, it doesn't matter. It's not your fault that I'm in a bad mood, right? So understanding, that has to be the heartbeat. It has to be. There's no other way.
How did you, when you decided to launch Eda Rosa LLC, and you've told the story before on your podcast and with me, and when you do your speaking engagements, how did you set out to build your brand? Like, you came from a paralegal background, not a marketing background, as did I. But what were the first steps you took to build your brand?
I started investigating and researching, which is the best thing that a litigation paralegal does anyway. So I took my skills, whatever was transferable, right? And I inputted it into this new business model, right? I also had to do a lot of mindset shifts, right? Because from going from a 9 to 5, employee being fed income and benefits and PTO and all the things, you no longer have any of that. You are your PTO, you are your, salary, and you just got to figure it out, right? So that was a huge mindset shift that nobody talks about when you're transitioning from a full-time employee to building your own business. Another thing, it was a lot of failures. And I'm very proud of saying that. I'm very proud of saying I failed, because within those failures, I've learned so many lessons. And I said, you know what? I'll never do that again. Or maybe I'll take this and not that. And my last bit I would tell you guys is, when, as much as we learn from our failures, learn what you did right. Because if you can replicate that and 10x it, like Rogo's always telling me, Melissa's always telling me, 10x it, then that's where your next level comes in. Things will literally come to you. So as I figured out, we started with just providing freelance paralegal services. That's how I started at Eda Rosa LLC. It later evolved into what it is now: consulting, paralegal coaching, podcasting, going to CleoCon, going to NALA, InfoTrack, and being on all these stages nationwide. But that actually came from something else, right? That came from networking and marketing and putting yourself out there and creating opportunities versus just sitting there and waiting for those opportunities.
And let's back that up too, because you called me Rogo and then you corrected yourself and said Melissa. And I guarantee you the majority of the legal tech industry does not know my first name is Melissa.
Oh, Rogo's your brand.
Yeah,
Right.
that's exactly what it is.
Right.
That is.
Even my 8-year-old calls her Rogo. So.
Yeah.
The Rogo.
You Rogo.
Rogo.
Right.
So do y'all know where Rogo actually came from besides my last name? When I was 14 years old and a freshman in high school in Alabama, where I was raised, my English teacher, very smart woman, loved her, Miss Kelso. Just in class, and I did really well. I mean, we're in law, right? We do research and writing for a living. So English, I was acing it, right? And in class, she called on me for something, and she just looked at me and called me Rogo, just like that. And it stuck since I was 14 years old. And because Rogozinski is obviously not a very Southern name. In my whole life, I was in Alabama, no kidding, for 34 years. And I cannot tell you the number of times my entire life, the entire 34 years that I was there, every time somebody would hear it, they would ask me, how do you spell that?
Yeah.
Or they would look at it and how do you pronounce that? And the most common pronunciations would be Roginski, Rodriguez, Robinson. Right. So, so Rogo, since I was 14 years old. But you're right, it's the brand. Like, it just stuck, personally and professionally. And then the RPC strategies, that came from when I had my first business, the ESI Roundtable. And most people know the story. I went into business for myself the first time because my mother was diagnosed with with a terminal condition. But then I ended up having some critical health issues that I didn't see coming. I've been healthy my whole life, take care of myself. but it was critical and it happened all at the same time. And so I had already been doing ESI roundtable type programs and CLEs in Birmingham. And when all of that happened, I had an opportunity. I was actually, the legal community, judges and lawyers encouraged me to turn it into a business because that would give me the flexibility that I needed to manage my mother's health issues and my own, but still try to earn an income. So I didn't do the entrepreneur thing because I woke up one day and thought I could do this better. So I did that, for several years, and then she passed away, and I finally was done with all my stuff. And I finally had to shut down at one point, and I sent out this big email about the story of the round table and how great it was, and how much the community meant to me. And there's this Dylan Thomas has this poem called "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night." And I learned about it when I was in high school, and there was a symphony, but I played French horn, so there was a orchestral piece, and we played that. So I found on YouTube a recording of Dylan Thomas reading this, and he wrote it for his own father when his own father was dying, and Dylan Thomas was not ready for his father to go. So the poem was about fight and hold on because Dylan wasn't ready to let him go. And that was the same message with the round table. I didn't really want to let it go, but I had nothing left, and I had to finish taking care of myself. So I send this email out with this story and the recording and all of that. And within 20 minutes, I had to walk away from the computer because I got hundreds of emails in, and a lot from people I had not actually connected with, but had been following what we were doing with the round table. And the round table is a brand name too, like they abbreviated or ESERT, the acronym. And in some of those messages, people knew the story, and the messages were, "We hope to see the phoenix rise again." I never saw RPC strategies coming. I shut down the roundtable in 2016, and I filed my LLC for RPC Strategies 3 years later in April of 2019. Within that 3 years, I promise you, I could never have told you that was going to happen. And so when the opportunity came to create the company, RPC, RPC stands for Rising Phoenix Consulting. So I named it after the clients. And the whole Rising from the Ashes, I have 573 stories of how I and this company have risen from the ashes. And so the whole fire and the flame, and when Mark, started working with me with RPC 5 years ago, he's been with me for 12 years. He asked me, he's like, "Do you trust me with your logo?" And I was like, "Yeah, what are you going to do?" He's like, "Do you trust me?" I was like, "I trust you." And it came back about 2 days later.
Always a critical question.
Yeah.
He set my logo on fire. This phoenix rising just on fire. And it just, anyway, and I've got a tattoo with a phoenix rising from the ashes, like the whole 9 yards. So that's the story, the branding behind Rogo. And by the way, my name is actually Melissa. It's on my birth certificate. And RPC Strategies. So
the thing most people don't realize about nicknames is you can't give yourself one. It has to be given to you. And so I see a lot of people, they try and nickname themselves, and that it ends up feeling very inauthentic. And so the nickname somebody gives you, then that's the reason it sticks, is because it's generally authentic, Yeah,
mine literally came from a comment on LinkedIn. They're like, "Oh my God, you're such a CEO paralegal." And I was like, "What?" And they're like, "We like that." And then it just blew up from there. And so literally our whole onboarding for our company is called the CEO Academy, and, everything. And that's where Limitless came from, and all the other stuff that we came, out of that one comment, it just went viral. Like you were saying, it just goes viral,
It's that being able to see the happy accident when it happens. My freelance operation is called Joe 2.0, and the reason it's called Joe 2.0 is I had worked for a magazine for 13 years, and it was a great place to work, but it was a grind. 13 years of producing 3 magazines monthly with 3 people and a photographer. We cranked out a huge amount of work, but my life was always 4 months out of whack because of how far in advance we work. And I just couldn't do it anymore, and I walked away from it. And I like working with my hands. The thing with design is it's all on the computer now. And when I got out into the industry, it was hand skills. And so I went back to doing some carpentry and doing that kind of work. And I had a friend of mine who had offered me a kitchen remodel. And I thought, this is finally, it's decent money. but and the amount of tools and supplies I'm going to have to buy to do the job, it's going to make it a wash, basically. And so it's like, what I realized was, it's not that I don't like graphic design, it's that I just didn't enjoy it where I was doing it. And I couldn't visualize where I would go after that. I had worked my way up to the top of the line at the company, and they were paying me more money than I figured I would ever make being a graphic designer. And so I almost put myself in a box because I couldn't visualize where I was going to go after that. And so, I needed some time away from it, and I was on my way home from this job, and I said, it's not that I don't like doing graphic design, I just didn't like doing it where I was at. So I need to come up with a new version. I need a new version of me. I need Joe 2.0. And I was like, oh, there's the name. Okay, that's the hardest part right there, is putting the name on it. Mm-hmm. And so then the rest of it just kind of fell into place. And so when we started the mortuary, my daughter looked at me, because I have a sarcastic teenage daughter, and she goes, "So is this Joe 3.0 now?"
Where she gets it from.
Yeah, made me laugh out loud. I was like, "Oh, baby."
I'm so proud. I know, proud parent moment. I get
exactly.
it. Totally get it.
Apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So,
and that's great. That's confirmation of genes.
Yes.
Let's talk about AI, because y'all are kind of skirting around it. But we've been talking about our personal stories, right? And how different businesses have influenced us and how we've built our own. But especially with AI, that's the thing that everybody's talking about now. But the reality is, the way that people are searching for information, Google held that dominant spot for decades, right? Mm-hmm. But because of social media, and the way people search through, so social media has been the first place that people started diverting their attention, depending on where they're going. And there's certain social media channels that are really good for B2C businesses, and there's certain social media that's good for B2B. And that's something that we teach as well. You don't have to be on all the platforms. You only need to be on the ones where your buying audience gets their information, right?
Right.
But then we have AI. So AI, LLMs, people are using LLMs like Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, ChatGPT. They're using these for their search engines now. And so, that on top of data privacy laws, third-party cookies being phased out, the way that search was done for probably the last 20, 25 years, that's been splintered now, and people are doing searches in different ways. And there's a lot of these platforms too that are cracking down on AI generated content, AI generated creations. And it's fun to play with, but we've seen, especially on LinkedIn, since November, we saw a steep decline on engagement. It's been harder to get engagement, but I'm seeing it across, all kinds of influencers that I know. And what happened is they're changing the algorithms, and they're cracking down on AI generated content, because it's creating an exponential amount of false positives. And that's why personal branding, we're really preaching that hard. Personal branding, Eda, like you were saying, pictures of you with your kids. I get the same thing. If I post pictures of me at conferences or with other people at conferences, those are the ones that get the most engagement. Or if I post myself from a coffee shop working on something, or I post, a picture of the lightning storm from my balcony because I overlook the Atlantic Ocean. It's anything about my personal life, I get tons of attention.
It's authentic.
Yeah, it is. And I create a ton of content otherwise.
Right.
But it's the personal stuff.
Right.
And that's what they want right now, because
and I think it goes back to what Joe. That's what Joe was saying, though, right? Joe was saying people are craving authenticity is really what I was gathering from what he was talking about when everybody's constantly being pitched, right? The ads that we skip if we're on the free versions of these, social media outlets or informational searches and things like that. But back to your ChatGPT really quick. I actually did a little experiment with ChatGPT. I have the paid version. Obviously, I don't put any confidential stuff in there, but it does know a lot about me and my company because obviously I need it to, right? So when I first got the paid version, I said, tell me a little bit about Eda Rosa LLC, the Let's Talk Paralegal podcast. And, I just went on and on and on. It knew very little, compared to when you do to Google, we're like first page, we're there, and I don't pay for any of that, but it's just the people running the searches, right? And so I was like, okay, how can I change that? Because I know that ChatGPT is going to be like pretty much the next Google, right? So I need to make sure that when people are ordering pizza, they're going to order at a pizza. It's kind of like my analogy when it comes to that. Because eventually then we're going into the agentic AI, right? Where even our assistants, our Siris, our, Google Assistant is no longer Google Assistant, is now Gemini. It's been completely replaced by Gemini as of recent. And so all these things, when we're talking to them, hey, I need to order some food, it's going to just pick it for you. It's going to get to the point where it's just going to pick whatever restaurant they feel you're going to like, and they're going to order from there. So you're going to have to be the John Baker pizza place, on the corner in order for that pizza to get ordered from that assistant. If not, it's just going to go with the higher ratings, the higher reviews, your frequent buys, and it's going to just analyze you as the person, and it's just going to order the pizza from wherever, right? So I'm like, I need to make sure that Eda Rosa LLC stays relevant. Right? And so how can I do that? So I started feeding ChatGPT. Hey, ChatGPT, this is what we do. These are our services. These are the people that we love. These are our clients that we serve on a day to day. This is kind of like what we're looking for. This is the languages that they speak and the places that they offer services to. And I just started feeding it. Obviously non-proprietary or anything like that where it can just be copied and pasted and taken, right? But I wanted it to learn about me. And then give or take a year ago, I did the same thing and I said, hey, Chat, because I call him Chat. Him and I are on a one-on-one basis. And I go, hey, Chat, can you tell me a little bit about Eda Rosa LLC? And oh, you're number one on Spotify, iHeart, this, that, you're in the top 25%, So that goes with the branding, right? So you're feeding information consistently. I know you're the redhead with the wild outfits, right? They might not know my name, but they know that I have red hair and they know that I wear wild outfits and that I spoke at so-and-so because they saw it somewhere from somebody sharing it from the event and selfies everywhere, right? Because that's what I do when I meet people. Hey, make sure you tag me. Being genuine, obviously I want to keep in touch with this person and I want to connect with them if we didn't get a chance to connect, in person. But it's like, hey, you took a selfie of me. That means you really liked what I had to say. Tag me. Make sure you tag me. And where, right? And then you tell them where. That's simple, organic connections where they may or may not buy your services, but maybe a year from now, they come into someone and they say, do you know somebody that offers a service? Oh my God, I met this girl. She was amazing. She spoke great. I took a selfie. She took a point to, tag her. We still can't, I watch her. I follow her. Those are the people, you got to be memorable, right? You gotta make or break your presence.
Right.
It kind of leads us into the question about how do you measure ROI, because ROI is not always or exclusively dollars in revenue. And you said like about people recognizing you because of the red hair and the crazy outfits and whatnot. And that made me think too, for several years now, my signature color when I'm at conferences has been white. I have a white suit, I have white jeans, white tops, white whatever. And I used to have like wild pink and purple hair, right? So everybody remembers that. I went to a conference in Nashville, so I'm not doing the pink and purple now, right? It's just blonde and kind of this real pretty like rose gold kind of auburn. And after 50, I decided to try to be a little normal.
Good luck with that.
Boring.
So whatever, but I'm sure we'll go back to pink and purple soon. But in earlier this year, I went to the Women in AI conference in Nashville, Tennessee, and I go there. And I think it was a little bit chilly. The weather was really nice. It was a little bit cooler. Of course, I'm in Florida. It's hot all the time, right? But so it was a little cooler. So I had jeans and a pair of boots and a jacket, whatever. But I had blue jeans, and I don't remember what top I was wearing with it, but whatever. Maybe a black top and a black this really cool metallic jacket or something like that. Whatever it wasn't white. And I walk in and there's about 150 women, and they're from different industries. It wasn't all legal tech. They're different industries, different professions, different roles. But one of the women from legal tech, I walk up to a whole group of them, and she's like, the first thing out of her mouth, she's like, oh, you usually wear white. I almost didn't recognize you. And so I had branded myself with that white. And the reason I'm wearing white now and my nails are like this is because every month when I get my nails done, and as I was doing this podcast, instead of it being complicated for me to choose what to wear or what color to paint my nails, I decided to just go with the birthstone of the month. So this is the month of April, and the month of April is diamonds, white. So, and then I got these done 2 weeks ago. So it was still March. I had 1 week left in March, and that's aquamarine. See? And so I did the transition, and I get them done again on Thursday. So they'll be all white. So yeah, white was my go-to color. But you know what? No one else was wearing it.
Nope.
And there was a conference a couple years ago, Legal Week. And I remember, walking around and whatever, it was 2 or 3 years ago. And I saw Doug Kaminsky, who's a good colleague and friend of mine, and pictures and whatever, people tagging them right at it. I always do the hashtag Where's Rogo, and I take pictures with a lot of people and post them after their conferences. And I remember Doug Kaminsky posting on LinkedIn after, one of those pictures. He's like, Rogo is the only person I know that can walk around Legal Week in February in white and not get it dirty. So.
But that goes back to like branding, right? So like I know a lot personally.
Well, that measures ROI because it's recognizable, and that's the emotional connection. That's the familiarity. Like that's part of ROI. Like I said, ROI isn't just always revenue. I mean, I've got a story for that too, but it's the same thing that Joe, that you're talking about Diggum Deep Mortuary, and Eda, you're talking about Eda Rosa. Like you have to put the time and the work in. Like the first few years, it's recognizing you.
Right.
That's ROI right there. And then I was talking to my team in January about what our plans were for 2025. And I did a look back to 24 and a look back from the whole, we were 6 years on April 3rd of this year, so last week. But I did a whole look back on the revenue and how we've iterated our services, how we've, the team has turned over, and how we have really we've got the right pieces. We've got the right team, the right process, the right operations, and all of that evolution that Joe was talking about, in the first few years. But the reality was all the revenue we've generated, every dime that we've generated for the last 6 years was solely based on my brand. I didn't lift a finger to prospecting and sales because I was busy trying to figure out how to build a company.
Right.
And I chose because we're bootstrapped, we're service, there's no funding for this, right? I chose to focus on how to build something that was solid and stable. And it was tough because you have a lot of dips and you have a lot of debt, but I felt like that was the right path for us. And now we have that foundation and we have something that is scalable. So now I can put time into prospecting and sales, but it's also allowing me to have better conversations. And people recognize, because I put the work in for those first 6 years, people know Rogo, people know me in white, people know RPC, they know the Phoenix on Fire, they know the color palette, they, the strategies. Like I was asked yesterday, what exactly people are, what is the strategies part? And it's being able to explain, we're not a marketing firm. We're marketing plus sales because we understand both. We understand how to marry them. There's a strategy behind making that work, making marketing work for you so that it leads to sales, sales-driven marketing.
Yep.
Joe, how do you measure ROI? How do you help your clients measure ROI?
Every time we do something.
Don't you say, I don't know.
Well, when I get a lot of clients and they walk in and they say, well, we want to redo the website, or we want to redo something. You did this for somebody and they recommended you and we want to redo the website. And you find out that the reason for redoing something is driven from an internal scenario, not an external thing. And so I always like to turn that around. It's like, well, if we're going to redo this and we're going to spend the money, what do your clients want from this? I know what you want to do, but what do your clients want? And, I had recently had a client and they were like, oh, we got to get on mobile. We got to get on mobile. The website's really not built for mobile, and that's where everything is. Well, they're an industrial manufacturing company. Most of their information on their website is huge table data, which is not really something you look at on a website. And you start looking at their analytics, and 2% of their traffic is mobile data, and the rest of it's desktop data. And that's what they're their clients are looking for. And I said, well, let's design a questionnaire here that you can send out to people and ask them what you want. What do they want from the website? What's not working for them? Where do they want to go with this? And because that's going to get you the ROI, is getting them invested in it. It's like, hey, and on top of that, there's a subliminal scenario that says you care about what the customer wants from you, not what you're wanting to shove down the customer's throat. And so, the illusion of care is more important than just your agenda. So it's like, ask them to be involved in the process, because this strengthens your relationship with them and creates more investment from them in your product, because they feel like they're being heard. And so that return on investment right there is clients that feel like you listen to them, and so you strengthen that relationship. And maybe you're one of the 3 people that they call on a regular basis when they want to put something out to bid or they want to talk to somebody about something. But, if you come across as being the company that's listening to them, listening to the customer, then you slowly end up being the default person that they're going to reach out to, because there's that relationship there where you're asking them, you're not just telling them what it is, you're asking for their input on how you do business. And how do we make it better for you? So that kind of relationship building is key to achieve the ROI that you want.
So we only have a couple minutes, and then we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to ask both of you, what kind of advice would you give to someone who's just starting to build their personal or business brand? Eda, let's start with you.
I would just piggy off what Joe just said. What do your clients want versus what do you think they want? Because they're only going to buy and purchase products that they actually want. Now, you will find yourself in the fork of the road, which was recently what happened to me. I was about to end the Limitless Paralegal events because we weren't really getting the traction and the attention that we wanted. But as luck would have it, literally, Mother Nature itself was coming through in October of last year, which made me reschedule the event to March. And boom, we got 30 more, participants, right? So sometimes you just get the timing wrong, or sometimes people just don't want to travel during that time. So by changing and pivoting your idea is also another kind of test run that you can do, right? I thought October was great because we're in Florida and the weather is probably the best in October. However, our audience didn't, because they were nationwide and they were coming from other places, right? So understanding your audience and their needs, we threw out surveys, we throw out polls, and we're like, would you want this event somewhere else? Do you always want it in Florida, or do you want it somewhere else? And boom, there we go. We got our tour for 2026 because people are more willing to go when it's closer to home versus investing in hotels and doing all the things, right? So if it takes you to go to them, perfect. That whatever it takes, as long as the return on investment is there, I think the risk is more than the reward, and then sometimes the reward is worth the risk. So you always have to outweigh it. As a business owner, that's really what it is, risk versus reward. So making every decision is really analyzing what's my risk and what's my reward.
And what does your audience want?
Right. Versus what can you give them?
Right.
And never underestimate your audience's desire for different stuff, and they will not all be on the same page. The illusion is being able to make everybody happy, but you have to make a concerted effort to make the majority of them happy. So,
and Joe, what about you? What? Because I've got some ideas how I'm going to wrap up this advice. What advice would you give to someone building their business?
When you're working on your business plan, portion a significant amount of money to your logo, your brand, and your marketing. I can't tell you how many people come in, they've gotten their loan, they have their location, they know what their widget's going to be, and when you talk to them about their logo or their brand, they go, oh, well, we didn't put any money aside for that. Or, what's your marketing plan after this? How is anybody going to know what you do? And they're like, well, we didn't really count on that. And it's like, well, we're going to get a Facebook page and that'll be good enough. And it's like, this is your brand, and your marketing is as much important as your lease on your location is, on the maintenance on your fleet of vehicles, on the people that you hire so that they're qualified people. And so it really needs to be, you need a budget for that, and you need an allocation for that, because it's literally, you can put all this stuff together, but if no one knows you're there, then what are you doing? So, having enough foresight in the beginning to have a marketing budget, have a branding budget, and, keep that in mind as you go through, that money is earmarked for that. And that's going to help you succeed.
So in wrapping this up, I'm going to kind of summarize this advice. Know your audience, know what they want, know what they need, understand your own mission and values, make a decision, budget for it, get it done, and get it done right by a professional.
Yeah.
And don't change it. Don't keep changing it every 6 months or every year. We've seen that with other companies, and there's no consistency. And no one knows who you are. You can't even get off the ground if no one knows who you are. And remember my own story. The first 6 years of RPC, every dime of revenue that we generated was solely based on my brand from the ESI Roundtable. So there's a lot of ways to measure brand awareness ROI, but just think through those things when you're launching your business, or you're growing your business, or you've got an established business and you've had the same brand for 15, 20 years, and maybe it's time to rebrand, and consider that, and rebrand and, update your website. We've got a case study on rebranding too. We don't have time to talk about that. It's in another one of our podcasts right before this episode. So, those are our advice. What is brand awareness? How to create it, and how to maximize it, and really experience ROI, not just from people knowing who you are, because that's a big part of the ROI, but absolutely brand awareness can be the sole source of revenue generation until you've built a stable company and you can really start expanding into the other things that help you generate revenue and recognition. So anyway, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, Eda, Rosa, and Joe Krout for being here with us. This was a fun conversation. We'll have contact information in the description, and definitely we'll make sure you know where to find Diggum Deep Mortuary swag. And please contact Eda for your help with your law firm staffing and consulting needs and training. And please let RPC know how we can help you with your growth marketing. So thanks, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.